Hello, everybody. We are back with another episode of In Session with Jamie E. You guys, we are dealing with things so that we can heal the things. So, the last 2 weeks, we have really been discussing deliverance and therapy, and our focus has been on how do we actually marry deliverance with therapy. Some of us hear those terms, some of us do the acts, and some of us don't fully know what's next. Where do I go from here? Do I get deliverance? Do I need therapy? Is deliverance enough? So I'm here to just help us answer some of those questions and walk through all the things. So first week we dealt with tell your truth. Tell your story. You gotta say it out loud. Most of the time, you will not get free if you don't own your truth. You got to own it. And it's okay to own it. It's not easy to own it, but it is okay to own it. As you own your truth, you can begin to walk into freedom. You begin to walk yourself into levels of deliverance. And eventually, you get to a place where really it's not eating away at you. It's not dealing with you in private, secret spaces because it's out in the open. It also helps you set parameters and set boundaries for yourself as you're trying to move forward. The next week, we talked about changing your narrative. So, I can be free from a thing, but if I continue the victim verbiage, if I continue saying certain things, if I stay in a certain narrative, it's going to be a little bit harder for me to really experience true freedom. This week, though, we're going even deeper. We are dealing with our behaviors. One thing that I thought about was, although a thing is not in you, it might be on you. Come on, that's a word. Some of us are free from a thing. It no longer resides inside of us, but the stench of it could still be on us. And it is very hard dealing with the residue. I feel like for myself, and I think I said this before, you can be over a thing, you could have moved on from a thing, but dealing with the residue of what was left because of it is a whole nother issue. And for me, this is really almost like step 3. You know, if we're trying to walk out deliverance, and like I said, deliverance for everybody is not, I woke up and it's gone. For some people, it is that way. And I've had things that it just felt like God instantly freed me from. And I was so grateful. There were other things that it was not so. I literally had to walk it out. I literally had to every day tell myself this is not that. Decide for myself that I'm going to move differently. But again, I think about when something enters in. Your body, how your brain works and things like that, it's wired the same way. If you start doing something on the regular, it becomes a habit. You don't even have to ask me to do it because I naturally start to do it. You don't have to beg me to do it because I naturally start to do it. So we have good habits. When I get home, take my clothes off and put them on the hanger. I don't throw clothes on the floor. That ain't me. But for some of us, this is a good habit. Don't leave dishes overnight. So, every time there's something dirty, make sure I wash it, put it away. Good habits. Good habits. Wake up, natural instinct, pray, read my word, things like that. We also have bad habits. And a lot of times when we are dealing with a thing for so long, we tend to pick up bad habits. And so this leads into our coping mechanisms. A lot of the things that we deal with, we see in our coping mechanisms. It's not hard to figure out what is working against us. It sometimes isn't even hard to figure out what's in our bloodline. You just need to check the way you cope. So, something goes wrong. What is your first thing? What are you inclined to do? What are you inclined to say? How are you inclined to act? So many of us deal with gluttony and we don't see it that way because we feel like we have control, but eating is a way that we cope. That's not necessarily a very good habit. We don't always want to see some of those things, but it's true. Anger, sometimes punching a wall, is the way that we cope. Not the best coping mechanism, but it can point back to, oh, there's a spirit here that I might need to deal with. Sexual things is the way that we cope. When I'm stressed, when I'm angry, when I'm frustrated, again, what are you naturally inclined to do? A lot of times we will be able to see what we're dealing with in the way that we cope. And most of the time, coping is a way to soothe ourselves. Now, let's go backwards. As a child, how did you soothe yourself? And I really want you to think about that. When you were younger, when you were dealing with things, when you felt hurt, whatever, what did you do? Did you talk to people? Did you go by yourself? Did you find other means like video games? Did you get quiet? Did you get angry? What were your methods? What were your ways? For some of us, we didn't have anybody to talk to, so we always got alone. Now, as we've gotten older, that looks different. So it becomes easier for me to deal by myself within myself. And then I start to use other things to keep me company. That could be alcohol. That could be noise. That could be people. That could be busyness. All the things. When we are dealing, we usually don't like to be alone. But the people, the things, and the methods that we use keep us company. And so this is a hard question, but what devils are you keeping company with? I'm going to let that sit there for a minute. Some of us are literally keeping company with things that are destroying us. And so if we're trying to get to a place of deliverance, sometimes we have to start with therapy to address that my coping mechanisms or the methods in which I'm doing things is not healthy. Not only is it not healthy, but I need to address why I'm doing it anyway. What is it that I'm trying to avoid? What is it that I'm trying to silence? What is it that I may not want to deal with? And how am I dealing with it? So whether I want to deal with it or not, I am dealing with it in some kind of way. It is just figuring out what that way is. So again, deep breath, because this is deep. So when we're talking about the residue, the way my mind is wired now is wired towards doing this thing, is wired towards saying this, is wired towards being connected to these people and stuff like that. And so part of the undoing is actually in the rewiring of my brain to do something different, to show up different. And again, believing that I can be different. That's really where we start. Then my actions begin to show up differently. As I continue in a new way, my mind begins to continue down that path. I start to create new habits. I start to create healthier habits. But as I'm creating the new ones, the ones over here that I'm no longer using start to disconnect to a point that I almost don't even remember how things used to be. And that's really good. I want you to consider when you worked a job, maybe. Let's say you had to do scanning. You learned how to do it. As you did it more, guess what? You got faster with it. As you kept coming in to do the job, it became second nature for you because you started making a connection in your brain to continue to do that. So much so that it was a very strong connection to a point that now you can probably teach somebody else how to do it. let's say you've been off that job 2 years. If somebody asks you to come back and do it again, guess what? I remember that I've done this before, but I may not fully remember how to do it, or I now have to reteach myself. And in some cases, I've totally forgotten. That's actually how the brain works. There are so many things like today, I think, oh yeah, I used to do that. And then I'm like, oh, I don't even remember how to set this up anymore. I don't even remember how to get this started anymore because I stopped doing it. That brain connection, the connections from neuron to neuron, is no longer there because it hadn't been fed. Again, we're going to keep it very simple. We're going to keep it very basic. If you don't feed a thing, it can't live. The things that you feed will live. The things that you don't feed will die. And so if we start focusing on feeding the right habits, feeding the right things, it will begin to allow us to kill off the thought processes that send us to a certain action that we no longer desire. But it's not always easy. The things that we've been doing for 30 years, okay, again, you may not be able to wake up and just not do it no more. It may take some working through. It may take some conversations. It may take some therapy and some prayer to help you get past those things. But you do have to make a decision that this no longer serves me and I no longer want this for my life. If you want to do better, you gotta want better. You can't just say I'm gonna do it and not really put in the energy and the work to do so. If you want to do better, you do have to want better. Because now that my thoughts are towards better, then my actions will be towards better. Whatever my feelings are about it, I'll work through that. But I gotta get my mind in a space that says, I don't have to live in this place any longer. I've been talking about the Israelites and I've been talking about the promised land. And I was thinking about the Israelites and the manna. And I was thinking about the fact that, again, they were more comfortable with the devils they knew than to get out of that space to reach something promised to them or to get into a place that was better for them. Why? Because my mind had been wired to be okay with slavery, that now freedom looks too hard. My mind is so wired for slavery that freedom looks too hard for me. And I'm starting to complain about seeing the goodness of God as I'm walking through my journey to the promised land. What type of mental slavery do you have to be in that you would be better being enslaved than being free? It makes no sense. It seems to make no sense until you start to sit with it and realize I'm the same way. I complained about the Lord making me free because this is what I use. This is comfortable for me. This feels good to me. What are we talking about? So you mean to tell me that you want me to do this? You want me to go this way? You want me to go this path? I think I like being bound. I think I prefer it. And so it's easy for us to judge the Israelites. Why would they? How could they? But it was all about their mental and their mindset. The residue of Egypt was on them so much that they were not able to shift themselves out of the Egyptian mentality to a place of freedom. They didn't know what that could be like. They didn't know what that felt like. And so it was easier to go with what they knew. And that's all they knew. And then we see that transition. Joseph, takes them in. They begin to have rest on every side. And I consider that new generation who knew what it was like to be free, who knew what it was like to have rest, and who felt more comfortable in freedom than they did slavery. And so my hope is that we begin to produce a generation that feels more comfortable in freedom than they do slavery, that feels more excited about the opportunity to be safe in the arms of God, to be free from the bounds of generational curses, who knows what it is to have rest on every side. I think that there is something so powerful about that statement, because all the warfare that they went through to get to that point, not only did it hit them, but it hit the generations after them. This freedom and level of deliverance that we're trying to get to here is not just for us, but it's for the generations coming after us. And we have to understand that it is possible. We have to understand that we are the called ones. We have to understand that we are chosen. That God didn't just say it to be saying it, but he literally chose us and considered us for such a time as this. So as we are moving into this space, it is important for us to deal with the behaviors and the actions. It is important for us to change some of our language, change the way that we move, because we keep saying, I don't want to look like what I've been through. But in some ways, it is a very conscious decision for me to say, I don't want to look like that anymore. I don't even want the stench of that anymore. We all know what our things are. We all know what we have dealt with. We all know what we currently deal with. And we're not helping ourselves to still lean into not maybe doing it, but being around it. It's not helping us to lean into not fully going all the way, but flirting with it. I think it's important for us to really be conscious about, how does my life currently mimic the thing that I said I was free from? What does that look like? And if I were to really take a full inventory of my life, would I say that I really am doing what I know to do to totally walk in freedom and to deal with the residue? So again, some of us are not in spaces that, again, we're acting on anything, but some of us stay in places close enough to flirt with it or keep the stench of it on us, where the spirit still picks it up. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes people are like, I don't know why I keep attracting this spirit. Maybe because it's still in you. Like, maybe it's not showing up the way that it used to, but that thing is still there. And so, again, self-awareness, because we got to get a little EQ around here. We got to get a little emotional intelligence. There are some things, I say this all the time, there are things that people shouldn't have to tell me about me. There are things that I should be able to notice about myself. And being just flat out honest with it and being like, you know what, that is me. Your girl is tripping. She needs to fix it. There are also things that, again, people can address that we may not know. But self-awareness is key. Emotional intelligence, self-awareness is a part of that emotional intelligence thing. Therapy, I believe, should help us become more emotionally aware, more self-aware. And I feel like it should build emotional intelligence, because I'm able to start dealing with myself, and I'm able to understand my why. Start breaking down the trauma and the things that have caused me to be the way that I am, and then creating plans and strategy around how to move forward to become better. There is opportunity to be better. There is opportunity to be free. There is opportunity to let go. We just have to start doing our part. So again, I didn't want to make this too long, but tell your story, change your narrative, and now I admonish you to deal with the residue. What residue is being left? What residue was left? and let me actually set up parameters, boundaries, and a game plan for myself to start to deal with this. Because if I don't want to keep attracting a thing, if I don't want to keep going through the cycle of a thing, it might mean I need to kind of wash off the residue of what this has done and again start rewiring my brain patterns so that I can move towards healing, so my actions can look like healing. And it will be a situation where not only is it not in me, but it's also not on me. I don't want it to be in me or on me. The smoke inhalation may not have hit my lungs, but I might come out smelling like it. So it's still on me. And again, what's on me is still going to attract. Maybe not as strong, but what's in me is going to attract even more. But we didn't got it out. We just got to get it off. And so it's a process. It's a journey. And we're going to just take that journey little by little. So next week is going to be our last week as we touch on this topic. That will be the 4th step to complete freedom. But I would love you guys' thoughts. I would love to know how this series is helping you. And we're going to keep going throughout this year with different series, different topics that we'll discuss. But this is like personal therapy. This is group therapy for all of us. So I pray that you guys not only get free, but you stay free. We're all in this together. So we're going to deal so that we can heal. So hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. But hey, it's in session. I can't wait to see you next week. Bye.